Most people are going to look at this new mental health policy and see the wrong thing. They will see magic mushrooms, they will see politics, they will see a headline, they will laugh, they will argue, they will call it strange, they will call it dangerous, they will call it a fad. That is not what I see. I see a locked door, and I see a government hand starting to turn the key. That is the kind of moment that can make fools rich for a season and disciplined people rich for a lifetime, but only if they understand the difference between a headline and a cash register. I have watched this happen in industry after industry for 40 years. The same old system has been selling pills to people who were still suffering. Different label, different commercial. Similar promise, take this. Wait several weeks, maybe it helps, maybe it does not, maybe the side effects arrive before the relief does. That is a cruel business. It is also a giant business. And whenever a giant business fails a desperate customer for long enough, capital starts looking for a crack in the wall. That crack has now appeared. I am not talking about recreational drugs. I am not talking about somebody wandering around a beach in Thailand and calling it medicine. I am not talking about a fantasy. I am talking about controlled clinical settings, FDA standards, safety data, physician supervision, insurance reimbursement, manufacturing, patents, scheduling, distribution, capital markets. In other words, I am talking about whether something controversial can become boring enough to become billable. That is where the money is. The first mechanism is what I call the door mechanism. When a market is illegal, ignored, or frozen, value sits underground. It can exist, but it cannot compound properly. Capital hates uncertainty. Insurance hates uncertainty. Hospitals hate uncertainty. Large institutions hate uncertainty. Then one change occurs. Not a cure, not a guarantee, just a pathway. The door does not need to swing wide open on day one. It only needs to open enough for serious money to stop treating the category like a circus and start treating it like a pipeline. That is what matters here. A serious mental illness executive order does not make every psychedelic company valuable. It does not magically turn bad science into good science. It does not remove the FDA. It does not remove the need for trials. It does not remove risk. But it can do something important. It can tell the market that the category has moved from the basement to the waiting room, and Wall Street notices waiting rooms. The order directed agencies to accelerate research models and appropriate drug approvals for psychedelic drugs that could treat serious mental illness. It pushed the FDA and DEA to prioritize certain pathways. It placed real emphasis on treatments that had already received breakthrough therapy designation. It directed federal collaboration with the EA and private sector. It allocated at least $50 million through ARPA-H for state partnerships and research support. That is not a finished business. But it is a signal, and in small biotech, signals can change the price of capital overnight. The second mechanism is the proof of payment mechanism. I never like an investment idea that relies only on imagination. Imagination is cheap. It is everywhere. It is usually overvalued. I want evidence that somebody has already paid for a similar thing. That is why Johnson & Johnson matters, not because Johnson & Johnson is the little rocket ship here. It is not. Johnson & Johnson is a giant elephant. It can sell a very successful product, and the stock may barely notice compared with a small company. But its product, Spravato, gave the market a lesson. Years ago, people said the model was too strange, too expensive, too hard to administer, too difficult for doctors. Too difficult for payers, too controversial. Then the drug kept growing. It became a blockbuster. Spravato sales reached nearly $1.7 billion last year, and in the first quarter of 2026, sales were reported at roughly $468 million. That is not a rumor. That is not a message board fantasy. That is commercial proof. And commercial proof changes the conversation. It tells you patients exist. It tells you doctors can be trained. It tells you systems can be built. It tells you payers can pay. It tells you a controversial treatment can move from suspicion to revenue. That does not mean every next drug wins. But it means the market is no longer theoretical. The third mechanism is the tiny bottle math. In large companies, a new product has to be enormous to move the whole machine. In small companies, a single approved drug can become the machine. This is where investors become either rich or stupid, and the distance between the two is very short. Take a small biotech with a drug candidate aimed at treatment, resistant depression. Assume it is pre-revenue or nearly pre-revenue. Assume the market does not trust it yet. Assume the chart looks awful because early enthusiasm died years ago. That is normal. Innovation does not travel in a straight line. First comes the dream, then comes the crash, then comes boredom, then comes the catalyst. The dream is when everyone wants the story. The crash is when timelines become real. The boredom is when weak holders leave. The catalyst is when data, approval, or revenue forces the market to reprice the whole thing. That is the pattern. Compass Pathways is the cleanest example in this category because it is the most advanced among the classic psychedelic developers. Its Comp 360 program is a synthetic psilocybin treatment designed for treatment-resistant depression. It has produced positive phase 3 data. It has breakthrough therapy designation. The FDA granted a rolling NDA review request and selected the treatment for the Commissioner's National Priority Voucher Program. That does not mean approval is guaranteed. Do not let anyone sell you that lie. There is no guaranteed approval in biotech. There is no guaranteed reimbursement. There is no guaranteed commercial ramp. There is no guaranteed safety profile at scale. But Compass is no longer just a dream. It has moved into the dangerous zone where the dream can either become a business or collapse under reality. The fourth mechanism is the time in chair mechanism. Most people think the most important question is whether the drug works. That is important. But it is not the only question. In this category, the chair matters, the clinic matters, the number of hours matters, the number of patients per Dalton Y matters, the required monitoring matters, the staff burden matters, the payer burden matters. If a treatment requires 6 to 8 hours of supervised time, the science may be elegant, but the business model becomes heavy. If a treatment can produce meaningful effects in a much shorter clinical window, the business model may scale faster. That is why ATI Beckley and GH Research matter in this conversation. ATI Beckley is not the same type of bet as Compass. Compass looks like the focused frontrunner. ATI Beckley looks more like a diversified platform with BPL, 003, BLS, 01, EMP, 01, and earlier programs in the pipeline. Its lead program, BPL 003, is a mebufotenin benzoate nasal spray for treatment-resistant depression. And it is designed around a shorter psychedelic duration. The company said phase 3 initiation for BPL 003 was expected in the second quarter of 2026. GH Research sits on a similar but distinct edge. Its lead program, GH001, is based on mebufotenin, also known as 5-MeO-DMT. The company has reported phase 2b data in treatment-resistant depression. And importantly, the FDA lifted a clinical hold in January 2026, clearing a path toward U.S. clinical investigation and a potential global phase 3 program. That lifting of a clinical hold matters. A clinical hold is not just a bureaucratic inconvenience. It is a warning light. When it is removed, the stock can breathe again. But breathing is not the same as winning. GH still has to prove it can move through phase 3. It still has to prove safety at scale. It still has to prove manufacturing, delivery, reimbursement, and adoption. But if a shorter duration treatment can show durable benefit and fit into clinical workflow, it changes the economic argument. The fifth mechanism is the dilution guillotine. I want you to listen carefully here because this is where amateurs get killed. In biotech, being right about the science is not enough. You can be right about the disease, you can be right about the drug, you can be right about the market, and you can still lose money. Why? Because the company may need cash before the market rewards it. Small biotech companies burn money. They hire scientists, they run trials, they pay regulators, they build commercial teams, they manufacture product, they prepare launches. They do all of this before the cash register starts ringing. That means one thing: they issue shares. How much cash is left? What is the burn rate? When is the next catalyst? Can the company reach the next value-creating event without raising capital? If it must raise, can it raise from strength or weakness? These are not side questions. These are the questions. A biotech investor who ignores dilution is like a farmer who ignores locusts. He may plant the right crop and still wake up with nothing. That is why I would never treat the whole category as a normal investment. I would not put retirement money into a pre-revenue drug company and then pretend I had bought Coca-Cola. That is madness. A small speculative position can be intelligent. A giant speculative position is usually vanity with a brokerage account. The sixth mechanism is the position size shield. If you want to survive long enough to catch big opportunities, you must make sure no single opportunity can kill you. That sounds obvious. Very few people follow it. They see a 10 times possibility and forget the 100% loss possibility. You do not need a large position in a high-risk idea to change your outcome. You need a position that is small enough to survive being wrong and large enough to matter if you are right. That is the whole art. If you put 1% into an idea and it goes to 0, you are annoyed. If it goes up 10 times, it becomes 10%. That changes the portfolio without risking the portfolio. If you put 30% into the same idea and it goes to 0, you are no longer an investor. You are a witness to your own stupidity. This is why I say the intelligent man does not avoid speculation entirely. He builds a fence around it. Inside the fence, he can take calculated shots. Outside the fence, he protects the family, and in this psychedelic category, the fence matters more than the excitement. There are too many ways to be wrong. The FDA can be slower than expected. The DEA scheduling process can delay access. Doctors may resist, payers may limit coverage, clinics may struggle with throughput, patients may not accept the treatment, competitors may arrive, patents may be challenged, safety issues may appear, the company may dilute, a political wind that helps today may stop helping tomorrow. That is the risk list. If you cannot read that list and stay calm, you have no business owning these stocks. The seventh mechanism is the exit discipline protocol. I have seen many people find a big winner and still end up poor. They did the hard part, they bought early, they endured volatility, they watched the stock rise, then they made the oldest mistake in markets, they fell in love, they turned a speculation into an identity, they said, this is the future. Then the future became crowded, the valuation became absurd. Insiders raised money, traders left, the stock fell, and the paper fortune returned to the people on the other side of the trade. There is no sin in taking profits. There is sin in letting greed turn a good decision into a round trip. If you buy a pre-revenue biotech for a catalyst, you must know what you own. You do not own a railroad. You do not own a regulated utility. You do not own a candy company with a 50-year brand. You own a claim on a future event. That means you need rules. Now let us bring the whole thing together. The psychedelic mental health trade is not one story. It is 7 gates. The first gate is policy. The second gate is clinical data. The third gate is FDA review. The fourth gate is scheduling and controlled access. The fifth gate is insurance reimbursement. The sixth gate is clinical delivery. The seventh gate is revenue. A company can pass the first gate and die at the third. It can pass the third and struggle at the fifth. It can pass the fifth and fail at the sixth because the treatment is too burdensome for the real world. The crowd will not think in gates. The crowd will think in headlines. That is your advantage. When a stock jumps 50% because a president signs an order, the crowd thinks the money has already been made. I think the opposite. A jump after policy is not the business. It is the market waking up. The real business begins when the product moves from a press release into a clinic, from a clinic into a payer contract, and from a payer contract into recurring revenue. This could be one of the most important new mental health markets of the next decade. And most of the stocks involved could still destroy capital. Both statements can be true. In fact, in emerging industries, they are often true together. A huge market does not guarantee a good stock. A good drug does not guarantee a good investment. A good policy does not guarantee a good entry price. That is the part Wall Street counts on you not understanding. They want you emotional. They want you to buy the dream when the dream is easy to sell. They want you to forget the balance sheet, the cash burn, the trial calendar, the dilution risk, and the exit rules. I have no use for that. I want the boring spine under the exciting story. Here is the boring spine. That is the whole story. Not magic. Not medicine for everyone. Not a guaranteed 10 times. Not a moral crusade, a door, a toll booth, a few companies trying to reach it before they run out of cash, and a market that may suddenly decide the entire category deserves a different price. Now let me give you the operating system. Do not buy because a headline sounds exciting. Do not buy because a stock already jumped. Do not buy because somebody on the internet says, this is the next quantum. Do not buy because a chart looks cheap. Cheap can become cheaper. Down 80% is not a bargain if the business is dying. Instead, build the file. Track the catalyst calendar, track the cash runway, track the trial status, track FDA interaction, track breakthrough therapy designation, track rolling review, track whether the company can reach the next gate without selling half the company to survive, track whether the treatment can actually fit into clinics, track whether payers are likely to reimburse, track whether management speaks in commercial terms or just scientific poetry, then decide your position size, small enough to sleep, large enough to matter, then write down your exit rules before the stock moves. before the market shouts, before greed changes your personality. That is how a serious investor approaches a dangerous opportunity. Most people want a prediction. I prefer a map. Prediction says, this will happen. A map says, if this gate opens, go here. If this gate closes, get out. If the price runs ahead of the facts, take some money off. If the facts improve and the price ignores it, pay attention. That is how you avoid being a tourist in a dangerous market. And this is a dangerous market. It has everything that attracts fools, tiny companies, big diseases, political headlines, explosive charts, words like breakthrough, words like priority, words like veteran mental health, words like billion-dollar market, words like first in class. Those words can be real, they can also be bait. Your job is not to worship the words, your job is to follow the cash. A patient is suffering. A doctor wants another tool. A payer decides whether to pay. A regulator decides whether to approve. A company decides whether it can manufacture and deliver. A shareholder decides whether the risk is worth the price. That is, the chain break one link and the story breaks. Hold the chain together, and you may have something extraordinary. So here is what I would remember. When the door opens, the first people through are often not the safest people. They are the most exposed people. That can be wonderful. That can be fatal. Compass may be closest to the front. ATI Beckley may have a broader spread of shots. GH Research may have a sharper commercial duration argument. Johnson & Johnson already proved payers and doctors can participate, but it is too large for this one product to define the entire shareholder outcome. That is the landscape. Not an instruction, a landscape. If you need certainty, buy certainty. If you want asymmetric speculation, respect the danger. And if you cannot respect the danger, the market will teach you. I have seen that lesson. It is expensive. The strange thing about great opportunities is that they almost never feel safe at the beginning. If they felt safe, they would already be priced like safety. The cheap moment comes when the crowd still has reasons to laugh, reasons to doubt, reasons to avoid the category altogether. Some of those reasons will be correct. That is why sizing matters. But if enough of those reasons stop being correct, the market can move faster than most people think. This is why I do not laugh at strange industries. I study them, I do not chase them blindly. I put them through the machine, policy, data, cash, patent, delivery, reimbursement, valuation, exit. The crowd will keep arguing about whether psychedelic medicine sounds respectable. Let them. Respectability usually arrives after the money has already moved. My question is simpler. Can the treatment pass the regulator? Can the clinic deliver it? Can the insurer pay for it? Can the company survive long enough to sell it? Can the shareholder avoid being diluted to death before the prize arrives? Can the investor take profits before the next enthusiasm cycle turns into the next disappointment? That is where the truth sits. Not in the headline, not in the hype. Not in the joke about mushrooms in the door, in the toll booth, in the cash register, and in the discipline to walk away when the facts stop supporting the price. If this market becomes what its believers think it can become, there will be fortunes made, but they will not be made by the people who scream the loudest. They will be made by the people who understood the gates, sized the risk, tracked the catalyst, and refused to confuse hope with evidence. That is how I would approach it. Coldly, patiently, with a small stake, a sharp pencil, and no romance. Because in markets, romance is expensive, and discipline is the only drug I have ever trusted.